In the early 1980s, a Greek immigrant born amidst incredible adversity entered Canadian political life. Bill Fatsis tried to get elected to Parliament in Toronto, but ran into a buzzsaw of different obstacles. Through it all, he contributed to building up the Greek-Canadian community and laying out a path for future so-called hyphenated Canadians to follow. He chronicles that adventure in his new memoir. It's called Not Looking for Trouble. And Bill Fatsis joins us now for more in our studio. It's so good to see you again.
Good to see you, Steve.
You know, we've known each other for like 40 years. It's kind of incredible.
Yes.
More than that, actually.
Yes.
Okay, the title of your book, Not Looking for Trouble, where did that come from?
Well, I wanted to write my memoirs a long time ago, but I was still with Immigration Appeal Board. And I didn't want to issue them with a pseudonym or anything. It was against the rules of the court. So in '79, Peter Worthington, my opponent for the nomination,
This is the guy who was the publisher of the Toronto Sun.
Of the Toronto Sun, he wrote his memoirs with the title Looking for Trouble. So I thought, I'll do mine Not Looking for Trouble.
Well, you weren't looking for trouble, but you found it with Peter Worthington, and we'll get to that story later. Where were you born?
I was born in a very small village in northwest Macedonia, the most northern province of Greece, only 5 kilometers from the Albanian border.
And
very
how was
small
your
community.
How was your childhood?
My childhood was a happy one, although I was born during the Civil War in Greece, and my father was killed when I was 1 year old. But my mother and the extended family and my 3 sisters and brother, the whole extended family extended a lot of love to me, so I didn't feel the aftermath so much. I felt like an orphan. It was difficult times at that time, but generally I had a very happy childhood.
But I presume there is sort of a hole that is always in your heart when you never know your father.
Yes, always. And that regrets me, and that's why every time I visit Greece, I go to pay my respects to his grave.
I'm going to ask our director, Sheldon Osmond, to bring up the first picture here. Image number 1, please. Here's you with, go ahead, tell us who's in this picture.
That's my mother and my oldest sister, Polixeni, or Tseni as we called her. And that's only 4 years, I believe, after my father was killed.
And where is that picture taken?
That's taken in our backyard, which is adjacent to the public school that you see in the background.
How do you think, I mean, you talked about the death of your father, you talked about the Civil War. You know, I mean, the beginning of your life was really quite traumatic. How did you negotiate your way around all of that?
Yes, it was, especially during the Civil War and immediately after. Many children were killed because of the bombardments of the warplanes. They were the British planes, and many children were killed. Therefore, many parents registered their kids to go to communist countries so they can be saved. So both right wing and left wing in the Civil War, on both sides, they sent their children away. So my siblings, except my oldest sister, Polixeni, that we just saw, she escaped at the border with Yugoslavia and came back. The rest of them, the 3 of them, didn't come back until 54 or 56.
So you're all split up at this time?
Yes, we did. And my mother didn't know whether they're alive or not. And it was very difficult for my mom, who became a widow at 33, no job, no money. Tried to feed us. You know, she would go and wash by hand all the laundry of the army in the area.
The fall of 1966, you make a big decision that will change your life. What was that decision?
Yes, that decision is to come to Canada for some family reasons, because my brother was here since 1960. And I came for that reason, but I was caught up with the dictatorship in Greece on April the 21st, 1967. And my mother was very, very apprehensive for me going back, because she wrote a letter to my older brother and said, you better keep the young one there because he has a big mouth and most of his friends are in jail. So my brother convinced me. He says, okay, they're not going to last too long. Why don't you stay here? learned the language a bit because I didn't speak any English when I came. I still don't, but in any way.
No. So how old were you when you learned English for the first time?
I was 19.
19.
Yes, 19. And then the dictatorship lasted for 7 years. So then I met my wife here, and the rest is history.
Right. What were you thinking when you were stepping on to the SS Queen Anna Maria?
I had mixed feelings because my mother, in those days, Steve, it was not easy to communicate. Anybody who immigrated, especially by ship, it was like saying goodbye, see them for the last time. So it was, that's the picture inside Queen Anna Maria, the steamliner, and I'm with co-passengers. The one immediately to my right is from my village, and the other couple is from a nearby city.
You look pretty good in a suit and a tie there.
Yes, actually, that was my first suit ever.
It was, eh?
Yeah, my mother had to sell a little calf so it can raise the money not only for the ticket, but also for my suit.
Nice. Greektown in Toronto today is really something, right? It is a very fun part of the city, restaurants, festivals. It's great. But of course, 50 years ago, 50 plus years ago, it wasn't quite the same. What was it like back then?
When I came, it was very thriving on the Danforth. I remember taking Bill Davis for lunch at the Byzantium restaurant on Danforth in those days.
He was the premier then.
He was the premier then, and as you know, I worked for Bob Elgie then, so I got to know
one of his cabinet
the
ministers.
premier quite well. And it was very thriving community. Now part, I guess, of the socialization process and no fresh immigration from Greece, the Greek community spread out after downtown on Bond Street, when on the Danforth in East York, and then Scarborough, and now in York region, mainly in York region.
Now, there was, as you just pointed out, a minister in Bill Davis's government named Dr. Robert Elgie. You worked for him.
Yes.
And one day he suggested that you get into politics yourself. He said, Bill, you should run in the upcoming, it was 1982, in an upcoming federal by-election on the Danforth. The riding was called Broadview-Greenwood back then. When he made that suggestion to you that you should run for office, what did you think at the time?
Immediately I told him, no, thanks. I lived the life of a politician with you now for almost then, I guess, 3-4 years or more. I said, I'm early in the morning with you, and then after that, do you make speeches, whether to the Steelworkers Union or whatever, and I have to be with you? No, thank you. I'm not running. And he got angry a bit, annoyed at me, because he said, well, then, if you're not prepared to do something about what you believe in, don't talk to me ever again about the rights of multiculturalism and ethnic minority rights if you're not prepared to contribute actively in this. So I really agonized over that weekend before I finally decided, because he gave me a guarantee that I couldn't refuse. He said, the nomination process is going to be short, and then, you come back. If you don't win, you come back in your position.
Let's show a picture here. We can show these two men who were so influential in your life. There's Bill Davis, the premier, on the left,
yes.
Robert Elgie on the right.
Yes.
And those two guys were very influential in your lives. Were there two politicians in this country you respected more than those two men?
Absolutely. I started with Bob Elgie. He gave me the opportunity of my life. But not only he became my political mentor, but a mentor in life. I mean, he was a man of principle. As you know, he was a lawyer and a neurosurgeon, and gave up a huge salary as the medical staff chief at Scarborough Hospital just to come to Queen's Park for $79,000 a year, while he was earning then over $400,000. He was a man of commitment. And then when I got to know Bill Davis and Roy McMurtry, those three influenced my political thought very much. And that's why I decided to join the party later on.
Okay, so you decide you're going to go for this nomination to become the progressive conservative candidate in Broadview-Greenwood for this 1982 federal by-election. How did the nomination fight go?
Well, I thought I'm going to campaign. I declared my candidacy on the 2nd of June, 1982. They had set a date for the nomination, the 18th of June. So I thought, okay, it's fine. Little I knew that they would postpone it 5 times to September the 9th. because some very influential people became the opponents. Ron Ritchie, who was a former MP, and a minister in the short-lived Joe Clark, my leader at the time, government, and some very rich people like Michael Hordo, who owned, as you know, most of Blue Street all the way from Bay to Avenue Road, the Piercy House and the Embassy Tavern, all those places. He owned a casino. He was campaigning with a Rolls Royce on the Danforth. And then the last moment, Peter Worthington, the co-owner and editor-in-chief of the Toronto Sun, declared his candidacy. And the local riding association were in his favor. So for him to catch up with me, they postponed it until the 9th of September. It was an ugly campaign. There were times that I wanted to give it up, not because I was afraid to lose, but I couldn't keep up in that long campaign. I was not prepared financially, to deal so many months of
But
campaigning.
you had a lot of support.
I did have. I was surprised when I said I need some help. Over 300 volunteers showed up in my campaign office. And the rest...
Well, hang on. We'll get to the rest in a second. You want to see what you looked like almost 43 years ago, giving your speech at the nomination meeting?
Yes.
Come on, Sheldon, let's have a look. Roll it, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you assist me in welcoming to the podium the candidate for election on October 12th, the next Progressive Conservative member to join the Joe Clark team. Welcome, Bill Fatsis.
This thing, what do you think when you see that footage?
Well, I was not too bad looking.
That campaign, you pointed out it got ugly.
Yes, it did.
What did it get ugly over?
It got over for two reasons. There was a local candidate, another fellow Greek by the name of George Vlachos, who had guaranteed to me that he's not going to run. And just before Peter Worthington comes into the scene, suddenly he declares his candidacy. Obviously a strategy, I don't know who instigated that, but certainly the strategy was to split the Greek vote. So, and then threats, bribery first, phone calls to my wife, will pay off your mortgage if Bill Fatsis, pulls out of the race.
Who made those phone calls?
Well, someone that my wife said that he was a supporter of Peter Worthington. Now, whether Peter knew that, I doubt that he knew. In these campaigns, there are a lot of fanatics. So I didn't pay too much attention, but I got angry. I said, whoever called that to bribe me, then my engines really got turned on. Up to then, I was iffy whether I should continue or not. And then I said, this is it. I'm going full speed to the end.
All in.
Yes, and then a phone call, again, probably from the same person my wife said that recognized the voices that they're going to kidnap my 5-year-old daughter. And then I went to the RCMP at the time, and they had assigned a guard for me, and it got really ugly.
Some of the coverage, Bill, was really astonishing, particularly in the Toronto Sun, of course, which was for Worthington. But they basically tried to suggest that somehow, quote unquote, the Greeks were trying to take over politics in Canada, and that was somehow illegitimate. How much did that offend you?
Very much, and I think the support that I got from the Greek community was encouraged by his opinion article saying that immigrants who believe in multiculturalism are not 100% Canadians, they're hyphenated Canadians. And that offended me personally and a lot of people in my own community, especially one Greek newspaper that called him a racist, but I paid the price. He accused me in the Sun that I called him a racist, and I never did, but he took advantage of that. But they proved it. When I won, on the front page, the Sun said it went to the Greeks.
That's what they said. That's right. It went to the Greeks.
Yeah.
Let's hear from the winner's speech, shall we? Sheldon, if you would, once again.
A fellow candidate, however, who is known from the little paper that grew, has referred to my candidacy as one of the two Greeks. He even attacked multiculturalism in favor of the US melting pot theory because he thinks, and I quote, Canadian mosaic does not create 100% citizens with their faith, duty, and love clear and undeniable. It is my firm conviction that new Canadians, regardless of origin, hyphenated or not, are proud Canadians, 100% Canadians with their faith, duty, and love for Canada clear and undeniable. Canadianism is not defined by the date of which one's parents or grandfathers came to this country. Multiculturalism is not a thing of interest to just one group. It is a state of being and a way of thinking about one's neighbors. English, Scottish, Irish, French, Italians, Portuguese, Chinese, Hindu, Vietnamese, or Greeks. We're all Canadians, and we're all free to preserve and to promote our cultural heritage with the blessing of our governments.
Now, multiculturalism today is a fact of Canadian life, but we have to remember back then, the Multiculturalism Act that Parliament had passed was barely 10 years old. It was just a little over 10 years old.
In 1982, when the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms came into existence, for the first time we saw the protection of multiculturalism and minority groups, cultural groups, being entrenched in the Section 27 of the Charter that says that, from now on, any interpretation of the Charter would be consistent with preserving the Canadian heritage, which is included ethnic for the first time. And it was very difficult, totally different than what it is. It was what they called, those that analyze this law were the first one in the world to enact multiculturalism law in the entire world. And it was the second phase after the 71 that developed, and it came all the way to 82, and then the institutionalization period for multiculturalism came from 82 onwards.
Now, after a nomination meeting, what the party hopes will happen is that the winner is able to convince all of the people he or she defeated to, come together, and everybody's going to support the victorious candidate and go and take on the other parties. That did not happen in your case. What happened in your case?
No, it did not. When I won, I expected all the ones that lost would support, and they did, except Peter Worthington.
What did he do?
He resigned the party, and he became an independent candidate in the same area.
And he ran as an independent?
He did run as an independent, and of course that affected my campaign quite a bit, actually.
Because it split the Conservative vote.
Well, Alan Gregg, who was the pollster then, as you know, Decima polling at that time, showed me in the by-election, which was October the 12th of 1982, to be the front runner to win. Until Peter Worthington came in, and we knew about a week before the actual date of the by-election, we slipped back because we split the PC vote.
So the NDP won the riding?
The NDP, Lynn MacDonald.
Won. And we should actually put this on the record. You were having a by-election in Broadview-Greenwood in the first place because who stepped down?
Bob Rae.
Bob Rae, that's right.
He
held the seat
his federal seat to become the Ontario NDP leader.
Very good. Okay, so the NDP carries the by-election, but of course there's a federal election less than 2 years later. But you decide not to try to challenge for the seat again. How come?
Yes, I'll tell you why, Steve. I was approached by the party to run again, and we knew the polls were so favorable when Brian Mulroney was the leader for the September the 4th, 1984 election. It was very favorable environment for me to try again. However, I was convinced that Peter Worthington would run again against me. And I did analyze that to the director of the federal party. And I said, it's not a good idea because he'll do exactly the same thing. And he proved it later on when Nancy Elgie went for the nomination. He did interfere, and he ran then afterwards. And when everybody won across the country, as you know, the only two was, I think it was a seat in Newfoundland, and he won. And then and the other one was Peter Worthington in Broadview-Greenwood that had come back to the fold of the party. Brian Mulroney allowed him to come back, and then he ran in Broadview-Greenwood and he lost.
He lost, yeah. 15 years after that by-election, you bumped into Peter Worthington in an elevator.
Yes.
What happened on that encounter?
At that time, I was a member of the Health Professions Review and Appeal Board of Ontario at the Colonnade building on Bloor. So I was going to a hearing that morning, and as I went in, there is Peter Worthington. I greeted him. I said, "How are you doing?" He said, "Fine. How are you? What are you doing now?" I told him. And I said, "Well, I hope no bad blood between us." He says, "No." So it was a very cordial type of
Now,
conversation.
tell me, why would it be cordial, given that you could argue that he cost you a political career? You never got elected because of him.
Because of him, yes. At the same time, I think, in a way, the political system in Canada owes me some gratitude that I'm the reason why he did not go to Parliament, because his influence with his strange ideas, politically strange ideas, according to my political view, would influence negatively Parliament at that time. So,
Now, this is more than 42 years ago, and I
Yes.
want people who are watching or listening to this to understand, like, what a big deal this nomination meeting was. This made national headlines. It was so raucous. It was so, like, elbows up,
Yes.
and I mean, it was really, really intense.
Yes.
When you think about it all these years later, what stays with you?
well, Steve, it was raucous for the reasons that we're discussing. And the thing is that it was for the first time in Canadian political history that losers don't work for the winner. And it's been documented to this day as a president, and also as a president he studied in political science texts at the University of Toronto and elsewhere, is the biggest local nominating convention in terms of numbers and voters. And so when I think back, I think I advanced my ideas, although I lost, for the first time ever. And to my knowledge, I was the first immigrant to run for federal political office, especially with the Tories that, never voted conservatives at the federal level. So I think I was a pioneer, and I feel proud that because of my candidacy, when other people from minorities, especially the ones that were born here, so someone like me with an accent be involved in politics, they were encouraged and they followed, and they did.
But that is, in some respects, the unfairness of it, in that you may have opened the door for a lot of future Greek Canadian people to run for office, and people of all different backgrounds to run for office, and they were successful, but you weren't. Does that bug you?
Not really. Honestly, as I said, I was there to bring into the political view the importance of multiculturalism and the involvement of minorities to the political system. It's not good enough to demand something. You have to contribute. And I think I was an example of contributing actively. And I projected that in the public eye. And with those respects, I think I'm very satisfied that I achieved that because of the publicity, because of Worthington. We were in the media every single day. I mean, I, as an immigration appeal judge, I was in Vancouver, and the cab driver recognized me. "Oh, you're the fellow that beat Peter Worthington." It was across the country. I had over 600 newspaper clippings covering our campaign from June all the way to October.
Amazing. All right, when you look back at it all, your community work, your political work, your judicial work, work on behalf, family heart, I mean, it's all chronicled in the book here. What do you hope people take from this book if they read it?
Well, two things. I think minority groups now should take a look, and if I could do it, they could do it much better. And the essence of multiculturalism has changed in all these years. Now, as I say in my book, Driving One Day in Court, in one writing, I saw all three candidates from the main three parties were from the same minority group. And I thought, how much it has changed in the years since I was trying to be involved in politics. But now the responsibility is on our side now. We have to communicate with each other. to contribute to the mix of what is creating the new Canadian culture. You know, sure, we do have new immigration from Eastern countries and other Muslim countries, which is a bit different than the traditional Christian or Jewish from European immigration. It has changed. It's different. It's a different culture. However, I think it's our duty now to become the Canada of essence, which creates a new Canadian culture, a mixture of all the cultures, along with the traditional Anglo-Saxon or Francophone cultures in Canada. I think it's incumbent on us to do that.
And you've been championing that message for going on 5 decades now.
Yes.
So well done. Well, you may not have been looking for trouble, but it seemed to find you, and the result is a pretty good story, Mr. Fatsis, so well done. Not Looking for Trouble is the title of the book. Bill Fatsis has been our guest. Great to see you again. Thank you.
Good to see you. Thank you for the invitation.